Ladies and gentlemen, what's going on? Adam Carswell here for another episode of the Liberland Show. Today, I am joined by the one and only Michael Roberts. Michael was brought into my world through the most dangerous man in the world, Dr. Danger Zone, aka Kolya Spori. Huge shout out to Kolya. And just Kolya, if you're listening, the influence that you've played in my life have given me tremendous clarity. As a free thinking man, I must say. So, anyways, it's cool that Kolya was the one who really played the connector role for us, Michael. That it's worth its weight in gold and more. It's great to have you here on the Liberland show. And before I forget, I should say this too for anyone tuned in right now who is considering becoming a Liberland citizen or simply just want to know more information about becoming a citizen of the great country of Liberland. Shoot an email over to citizenship.adam@liberland.org. That's citizenship.adam@liberland.org. And let's go ahead and get into it today. So, Michael, for those who are not familiar with you, your background, your story, in a couple minutes here, tell us who you are, sir.
Great to see you, Adam. Thanks for having me on. This is exciting,
Yeah,
and thanks for that nice intro.
my pleasure. I'm looking forward to this.
My main career has been in aviation. I started off in high school. I went to ground school to potentially become a pilot. I actually never finished that. I have a handful of hours, but that wasn't the direction I ended up going. And also, I will say there's been lots of other side journeys along the way, but the primary thing I've done in since that time was aviation related. And but most importantly, going back to 2007, I started a aviation brokerage, and my original intention actually wasn't even to start my own company.
It was it was to become a aircraft broker ultimately.
Yeah. So the way it worked was, in my case, I had by that time some aviation background, including air traffic control. Like I said, some sort of beginnings of aviation studies and so on in the early days like high school and early around college. And I was working in another industry in sales, and I had been kind of bored for 2 or 3 years, and I wanted to do something different. And so I actually that by that time there was a long running aviation magazine, classified magazine that had gone online. Because of course we're a good 10 years into the internet at that time. So or the public major use of the internet, I should say. The internet's been around a lot longer, but around 2007, you've got most major publications online by then, obviously. So I put up an ad online under job wanted, and I actually got one call, and I swore and I was sure that it was a prank call. The person didn't give their last name, and they said, they read my ad that said I wanted an aircraft sales job, and they said to me, "Come tomorrow to Trump Tower, 31st floor." And this is, of course, the South Florida Trump Tower, not New York. And so I took some time off work, took a really long lunch, showed up, went to the 31st floor, asked for the guy's first name, which he gave me was Michael. And they said, "Oh, okay, go to the next, go walk up the spiral stairs to the next floor." So I went to another receptionist, and she said, "Okay, you can go in." And I met this guy who was a developer, and he actually gave me my first chance or contract or whatever you want to call it, selling some aircraft as a listing agent, so to speak, the same way a commercial real estate agent might get a building to sell, except that these are not buildings; they're assets that can be moved around. Um, and then another contrast to sort of real estate is there's no real MLS type system or protection for this side or that side, and it's a little bit wild west when it comes to the sales side. And so this guy had purchased 8 old aircraft that weren't really in demand, and he wanted somebody that was so green that wouldn't question his prices and try. So that's what I did. That's how it started.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I know what you've been able to accomplish since '07. And yeah, I know you're working on some really cool things too, but I think, from me to you, when I think aircraft brokerage, or who do you got to talk to when you need to buy a plane, jet, helicopter, whatever, like Michael Roberts is first in mind, because to your point too, it's definitely rare. It's fascinating to me because I've talked to you about this before, kind of what the wild wild west layout of the industry looks like. And I gotta say, for sure, you've been the first guest on the Liberland show, and I'd say one of a few, if not the only, aircraft broker within the country's network. So I know we're working on probably getting some things set up for you here with Liberland soon. But I want to be the first one on record to say, Liberland, it looks like we have our first aircraft broker of the country. So on that note, Michael, do you have any words for listeners right now who might actually want to have a conversation with you on the topic, and maybe even a message to Liberland? Because I know you mentioned to me something about taking a level beyond just broker. So
Thanks for the invite. Yeah, I've been fascinated by Liberland and following it since day one. And in my case, personally, I was also one of the original people to move to New Hampshire in the Free State Project. So I'm a long time, you could say, libertarian leaning liberty leaning person. I'm also interested in my own ancestry and the relationship with the founding of the United States, something I spend time building, out the tree and the information. And these kind of things are of high value to me.
yeah, you have I think it's a testimony to your willingness to travel too, because for context, everyone, Michael's been over to 80 countries. I think he's closing in on 90. And wasn't it one of your ancestors is on the Bermuda flag or something like that?
Yeah, that was actually my favorite discovery, digging through and building the tree. The tools are much easier today. When I started, you actually had to go to libraries and look up birth and death dates and piece it together. Now it's all digitized, mostly digitized, and then also there's so many other people's trees that you can use a tool, like I think one is called Family Tree, Ancestry. There's some other tools that you can go in, and as long as you know your grandparents, all four of your grandparents' birth and death dates, that's a pretty good start, because then you cross over with so many other people's trees that you can start to build backwards and verify each of the additional members in your tree, and it's pretty easy with the tools today. But my favorite person that I found among many, and I encourage anybody to do this if you have the ability, was Stephen Hopkins. So it so as I was growing up, my I had never been to Bermuda, but my father was fascinated with Bermuda, and my parents would take a vacation to Bermuda frequently without us. They would just go on, as we got older, they'd go on their own, and this was like a never-ending fascination. And I didn't make it to Bermuda until a couple of years ago, and it was because as I built the tree, I found this gentleman named Stephen Hopkins. So it turns out this guy was on a ship called the Sea Venture in 1609 that was a resupply vessel for Jamestown. So um, I don't remember the exact. Some people are better at history than me, but I don't remember the exact dates of Jamestown. But I remember, very very early
Around that time.
1600s, and there were
Yeah.
a lot of problems getting that colony off the ground, uh, starvation, winters, et cetera, et cetera. So this was a resupply vessel, but it didn't make it. It crashed in a storm on Bermuda, which was uninhabited at that time, and there was a debate, an argument whether to go on or go back to England with basically they were able to build two small ships out of the material from the one crashed ship. And I'm distinguished that from two other ships that were in their convoy that went on and didn't crash. But with the crashed ship, the survivors did end up making two small ships and were able to get enough supplies. It took them 9 months, but they were able to get enough supplies like wild hog meat, water, etc., that was naturally available on Bermuda, uninhabited Bermuda at that time, that they saved Jamestown. And in some ways, may have saved or changed the trajectory of the United States being founded through Jamestown's ability to survive because of this um, resupply vessel. So I have an ancestor that was in that shipwreck and survived, went to Jamestown, and then went back to England, and then was a passenger on the Mayflower and lived the rest of his life in Massachusetts.
Wow. I didn't know that. I didn't know the full triangle, no pun intended, with Bermuda. I just knew the Bermuda connection. So that's really uh just fascinating story. And yeah, I know you and I have talked a lot about this offline. In fact, it's a nice reminder for me. It's really impressive for everyone tuned in right now what you can even accomplish with even some of the free tools that are available for ancestry tracking. I've been blown away recently, and the nudge that Michael gave me is I do need to just set up that account on ancestry.com or whatever, and then really let the AI get to work. But one other thing I did want to cover on our time here today, because we were talking about this before we hit record, and I think it'd just be super valuable for, I mean, really anyone from around the world who has not been to Serbia or Liberland yet in particular. The way to go, in my opinion, especially if you do not hold an EU passport, is to fly into Belgrade, and then whether you take a bus or a taxi or rent a car, get up to Apatin, Serbia, and check out Ark Village specifically. That's really the pulse of the country. I mean, you can go to Liberland now. There's people there. This has been a pretty common topic, I'd say, like the last 4 or 5, even 6 months now. Like everyone knows, okay, there are people living in Liberland, but it's a little bit dicey, especially if you're not a EU citizen. So, Michael, that's what I was going to say to you. And I know you've got a lot planned, but if you can find a way to get to Ark Village, I think the light bulb, and same goes for everyone here, the light bulb really starts to go off once you can just make it to that location.
I'd love to. Thanks. Yeah, I will travel pretty much anywhere if I have the opportunity. Um, there's never been a place I went that was exactly what I expected, good or bad.
Hmm.
Um, and I would rather be able to say, well, I've seen a place, or even if I just had a chance to fly into a capital city for a few days,
Yeah.
that's better than not going. And you always learn something if you're open to that. And there's different motivations for travel. I don't judge anybody what how long they stay or what they're up to or what whether they just go to four-star hotels. There's a lot of criticism of people to do that. That's fine if that's your business, and that's how it brings you to places. That's your prerogative. But I'm more where I may go to a place for business. I may need to be in places like that, but then maybe I have a few days free or a few days that I can add on or extend or add a neighboring country, and those kind of things, they add up. They add your experiences. It's like if you're living in the United States and you see a new U.S. highway to get somewhere, and you've gone up and down the interstate 100 times, but maybe you never went 2 hours out of your way to go another direction. So by consistently, and you mentioned Dr. Spory, he is probably the world's best systematic traveler. So by systematically having those habits, you can add to your experience, whether that's just for pure learning, whether you're an investor, and those insights are very valuable. I just remembered a book I read years ago. Um, you'll forgive me if I can't think of the title, but Jim Rogers' book about driving the motorcycle around the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a great sort of tale of the value of being somewhere in person. If somebody's into reading a book like that, it's very well worth it. But sorry, I can't remember the exact title.
No, you're so right, though. I think even from if someone listening is like, well, I can't go here, or there for whatever reason. You can even do this at the local level. I'm sure you have, Michael, but I take a look at um, just the amount, where we're based, the amount of places that we have not gone or seen yet. Being intentional to just going and trying and seeing something new is is definitely worth it. And yeah, when you're out on the road, kind of out of in an environment that you're not as comfortable with, now there's such thing as being responsible and having common sense and thinking things through. But if you can go off the beaten path, that's almost always the way to actually learning something new and learning something about yourself. So one thing I'll say, just as an example, going to Serbia initially, um, because probably like most North Americans have been just brainwashed with good old propaganda. I'm like, man, if I go to Serbia, am I going to be in danger? Like, what's going to happen when I get off the plane? I talked to my buddy Joey Langenbrunner, who's been on the show before, and Joey's like, dude, Adam, when you get to Serbia, honestly, man, you're probably going to be feel safer than you do in America. And I'm not like he wasn't wrong. Like I picked up a rental, drove up to Apatin, Serbia, and that I'll never forget that drive. I'm like, man, these are nice paved highways. I'm driving past cornfields. Like you could have said you were, uh, somewhere safe, quote unquote. So, anyways, yeah, I highly encourage anyone who hasn't been to Serbia yet to definitely go and check it out because it's not like what they tell us in the movies.
Well, what you just described is also true for entrepreneurship. If there's any, whether you're a young person thinking about you want to start a business, or maybe you're my age and it's quote unquote much later to do something like that, I encourage that because you start the adventure, you learn more about yourself, you maybe you have success, maybe you learn from some failures and then have success later. But it's a very valuable experience to, in certain circumstances, go out on your own and try to start something. And I would encourage people not to overthink it or overplan it. In the entrepreneurship side, there's a lot of people that they want to spend 2 years making a perfect website, or spend tons of money at lawyers, whether they open an LLC or an Inc. or something like that, and really they're, how should I say this? They're losing the first step. The first step is maybe their first sale or their first client, and they've overthought these other sort of tools that are necessary but not the key or not the point. I met a guy once a long time ago, and this is how I sort of developed these thoughts. And he was in an unusual business. I don't remember how or why or what was the background story, but for some reason this guy was into the manufacturing of extremely high end dresses. So, but he had spent 2 years making a website. And I said to him, but there's other people that have spent $1 billion making a website, like eBay. I said, so make your first sale. Put the description of how great. Maybe it's going to be difficult to sell. I don't remember again the specifics. This was two
I think
decades
that's
ago,
yeah.
but it was like maybe a $5,000 dress or something at that time. And I said to the guy, I said, why aren't you just trying to make one sale instead of making a website, and then take it from there? Maybe you make some money from the sale and
Yep.
work on a website. And now, that was a long time ago. Now the tools are completely different. You can get a domain for $11. You can sign up for a hosting plan for $4 a month, and the hosting plan includes an AI website builder that you just type a few paragraphs, and your website is done in 30 seconds, and then maybe you spend 10 minutes editing it. So now it's 15 minutes and literally the price of a couple of coffees at a coffee chain
Yeah.
to be online with a fully functioning and edited and done website in minutes and a few dollars. So that's what I would say to any I would say young people, but anybody that's is something standing in your way of becoming, if you really want to become an entrepreneur, of having an entity, of having a website, or even if you're employed but you have, you're not restricted from some sort of side consulting or some other form of business in another industry, what's stopping you from having an LLC and a website and a bank account with $100 in it, ready to send out an invoice, ready to do a job, ready to do your first self-employment project? And a lot of people, again, overthink those steps rather than just going, okay, let me just
Totally,
pick a name.
totally,
You know,
totally. Yeah,
Robert Services LLC, and it's got $100 in the bank account, and I've got a blank invoice that I could make for somebody, and I'm doing XYZ. And I just did a little quick website describing it, just in case somebody looks, because nobody's going to find it. It's just like a brochure; it just needs to be there. This whole thing of SEO and you're going to get found. No, you're probably not going to get found. It's not about that. It's just about saying, hey, here's my website, here's my email, here's my entity, and I have a bank account ready to bill you.
yeah,
If you have, assuming you have some service to offer, whatever that may be, or
yeah,
some product you want to make, or some product you want to order and have made somewhere else. So those are my ways that I try to boil down and simplify for a young person wanting to start a business, to just say, okay, make these steps really, really, really simple and don't over dramatize them. That keeps you from starting something you want to start.
facts. We we unfortunately got to bring this one down for a landing right now, but you've definitely given way more than I'm sure our audience uh you just crushed it today, dude. So thank you for coming on the show. And
Well, thank you.
before we get out of here, I do want what's the number one best way for anyone tuned in to follow up and get in touch with you? Maybe they want to buy, sell an aircraft, or just learn more about that business. Anything you spoke about today, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Jets.aero. So www.jets, Jets, .aero, like aerospace. .aero is our aviation version of .com. So just jets.aero.
There we go, ladies and gentlemen. Go get connected with Michael right now. Thank you for tuning into another episode of the Liberland Show. All the information is down below. And again, if you are at all thinking about becoming a citizen of Liberland, you can fire me an email as well at citizenship.adam@liberland.org. Thank you for tuning into another episode. We're probably going to have to bring Michael back on because there was way too much goodness today. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Remember, and all you think, say, and do, take it to the next level.